This evening we can do evening chanting in Pali, Book 1, page 18.
Dedication chanting tonight for Dr. Gary. That was a good friend of ours who's just had surgery.
Nati me saranam ganyam Dhammo me saranam varam Etena sajavajena vadeyam Sadhu sasane Dhammam me vandamane Nayam punyam vasutam ika Sabbe piyantaraya me mahe sunta sate jasa Vandamayan sankharu satyayan karomaste Supatipanno bhagavato sāvaka sangho Ujjupatipanno bhagavato sāvaka sangho Nyāyapatipanno bhagavato sāvaka sangho Samicipatipanno bhagavato sāvaka sangho Yadidam cattari purisa yukani yata purisa pukkala Esa bhagavato sāvaka sangho Pahuneyo pahuneyo dakineyo anjali karaniyo Anutaram punyaketam lokasati Nayam sankhapiting haromaste Sadham vajo supatipati punati punto Yogamito ariyapukkala sanghaseto Sila di dhamma avarasayakaya cito Vandamaham samariyanaganam susudam Sanghoyo sabapaninam saranam kemaputtamam Adhyanu satitanam vandamitam silenaham Sangha samitaso asangho men samikisaro Sangho dukkha sagata charipata charita same Sangha sahandiyate misariram jivitam chidam Vandanto ancharisami sangha sopatipanatam Nati me saranam anyam sangho me saranam varam Etena sajavajena vadeyam Sadhu sasane Sangham me vandamane Nayam punyam vasutam ika Sabbe piyantaraya me mahe sunta sate jasa Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhaṃ Dhammāṃ Saṅghāṃ Namasāmi. Okay, so it's our Saturday night gathering, and Ajahn Yaniko and about half the community are away on a camping trip, and it's been very quiet here, very pleasant. This morning, for the morning reflection, I gave a bit of a reflection around the importance of knowing how to bring happiness into the mind. And I thought I would flesh that out a bit more. And, I think it's something that is, particularly, as I mentioned this morning, I think, anyway, who knows what I said this morning. But the tendency for us is to try to make the mind peaceful really quickly, get insight, and which is quite a noble endeavor. And just jump into anapanasati, mindfulness of breathing, and different insight practices, but then wonder why meditation gets kind of dreary or dull sometimes, or not just dreary or dull. Sometimes it's just is plain tense and tight, and certainly from a traditional perspective, there's all sorts of kind of discursive practices that the Buddha gave, and because we sort of we work from the kind of axiom, I think, therefore I suffer. And so then we say, well, if I could just stop thinking, I would stop suffering. But, the reality is quite different. Even if we are able to stop thinking, we're sitting there suffering silently. So it's just so important to have some skill at brightening the mind, making the mind kind of bringing a gladness to the mind. And this is where there's traditional practices of what they're called anusati, recollections. And the recollection of the Buddha, Buddhanusati, Dhammanusati, recollection of the Dhamma, Sanghanusati, recollection of the Sangha, Silanusati, recollection of virtue, Jahakanusati, recollection of generosity, Devadanusati, recollection of the Devatas. These come up over and over and over again in the suttas, in the discourses, and they're important to know how to use them and be willing to use them in order to bring this sense of kind of gladness to the mind, because that's quite explicit when the Buddha talks about like using Buddhanusati. All of these anusatis, that when one recollects, and I use the Buddha as the example, when one recollects the Buddha, as one recollects, that the mind is not overwhelmed by lust, by hatred, by delusion, and when the mind is not overwhelmed or overcome by, obsessed by lust, hatred, and delusion, and the mind experiences a sense of settling from that, and gains a inspiration in the Buddha, gains inspiration gains inspiration in the meaning, gains inspiration in the Dhamma. And that gaining of inspiration with inspiration as a condition, and there's a sense of gladness. And when the mind is gladdened, then that sets up the conditions for a sense of joy. When the mind is joyful, then there's the conditions for a sense of tranquility to arise. When the mind is tranquil, then the conditions are there for the mind to experience happiness. The happy mind is that's the condition for the mind to be settled, to experience samadhi. So that with the mind being say settled and clear, then one is able to shed greed, hatred, delusion even more, gains a sense of energized quality and well-being. That is a great factor on the path for furthering one's practice, one's training, one's development, and refining of the mind, preparing it for insight and relinquishment. So these are those are instructions that the Buddha gives, and again, it's sort of oftentimes we try to make the mind peaceful with trying to get rid of our thinking, trying to not allow the mind to think very much. But there is the skillful use of the thought processes in order to lay a foundation of well-being, of gladness, and a recollection. The mind gets energized with that sense of inspiration, and the traditional way that the recollection of the Buddha is using the say, as we chanted this before the sit, there's a set of 9 qualities that in the recollection of the Buddha, that itipiso bhagawa, sort of the blessed one, is an arahant, is indeed the pure one. Arahang is pure. And oftentimes in Thai, the way it's translated is one is far from defilement, and that. So there's a sense of purity, and it's interesting that it's far from defilement. So the mind is, say, the mind that is peaceful and clear and happy. It's not not necessarily some absolute purity, but it is far from the tendency to get caught up in our obsessions or the things that defile the mind, stain the mind. Is the pure one. The Rahang Samma Sambuddho is the perfectly enlightened one, and oftentimes translated enlightened, self-enlightened. He didn't have a teacher, but still, through his own aspiration and kind of effort, energy that he put forth, and his own assiduousness in tracking what's the root of this problem, and to be perfectly enlightened, perfectly awakened. So that is when we recollect that, you realize, God, we're incredibly blessed to have still, even though it's 2,600 years have passed, we're still incredibly fortunate to have access to the teachings of a perfectly enlightened Buddha. Vijajarana Sampanno is impeccable in conduct and understanding. And that sense, because sometimes somebody can be really impeccable in their conduct, but understanding not so great. Or somebody can be very impeccable in their understanding, be able to analyze things, and there's all sorts of highly intelligent people who can run circles around most of us in terms of their intellect, but conduct not so good. So that the Buddha was impeccable in both his conduct and understanding, and it is important to realize that a perfectly awakened being, that's their characteristic, that's their nature. There's a sense of trust that can really be engendered through that. And that's one of the reasons why the teachings of the Buddha are still around. All this again, millennia have passed. Lokavidu is or a Sugato, Vijajarana Sampada, Sugato is translated as the accomplished one. There's lots of different translations. Our chanting book is not the definitive one. It's a good translation, but there's always going to be a variety of translations, and Sugato literally means well gone, and so that's and sometimes translated as noble. Accomplished one is a good translation, I think, of that term Sugato. It's almost a sort of a toss-off. It's a word, but it has a lot of. He's somebody who has. He's done what he needed to do. Lokavidu, the knower of the worlds. This sense of the Buddha being extremely accomplished in the realm of humans, of the like knowing the world so thoroughly, and the world, he didn't have a PhD in physics, but he was understood the nature of the world. But more importantly, when we say of the world, like there's a discourse where the Buddha is asked straightforward, the world, what is the world? And the Buddha responds, that whereby one is a perceiver of the world and a conceiver of the world, that is the world. So that it's not sort of, yes, one isn't fooled by the world out there, but also what's more important, one knows very clearly where this world is coming from, and the world is coming through our perception and our conception of what we think and feel about the world. Because that can be complicated. Being able to cut through, being a knower of the world is that ability to cut through the world, not be fooled by the world. Anuttaro Purisa Dhamma Sarati. And that's, he trains perfectly those who wish to be trained. And that, or an unexcelled teacher of those who wish to be trained or taught. Because he's not able to teach somebody who doesn't want to be taught, really. And nobody can really do that. But the Buddha could, and that's why when the Buddha described his dispensation, he described it as this Dhamma Vinaya, this teaching and this training, this teaching and this discipline, because it's not just an intellectual knowledge. It is something that you have to train your whole body, speech, and mind with. And the Buddha was able to lay down a training and a teaching that people could follow and practice. That's also why you think when the Buddha first started teaching, he made a point, and throughout his 45 years of teaching, and he said focusing on Four Noble Truths, making this rather than it being a philosophy or a religious belief system, he made it into something experiential, because we all experience dukkha, we all experience suffering. We all are the causes of suffering need to be understood. We all want to experience an ending, a cessation of suffering, of stress, of discontent, of dissatisfaction. So he made that into a teaching that was very practical, and of course the Eightfold Path, a path leading to the ending of suffering. Something that is essential to giving, because just having the tools to be able to work on how do we decrease this sense of discontent and dissatisfaction, distress that we are so much a part of the human condition, and so that we can train in this. We can work with this human condition and free ourselves. It's amazing teaching. And the Buddha didn't sort of basically, he said, because it's up to us. He said he can give the tools, he can give the way of practice, and he lays it all out for us. But it's up to us to do it. The Satadeva Manusanang, teacher of gods and humans. They're basically, as long as one were a human being, and to a certain, there were celestial beings who did understand the teaching of the Buddha. Mainly the humans and the variety of people who we taught. There were young children who, the youngest that's recorded in the canon is 7 years old, receiving the teachings and actually penetrating them and realizing them. And some were already very learned scholars, say Brahmins already, because they were like Brahmin priests, start from a very young age with a training, but very different than the Buddha's teaching, but they have a religious foundation, and to all the way to probably the most extreme case is Angulimala, the famous serial killer at the time of the Buddha, and he was able to teach, and he ordained as a monk and penetrated the teaching, realized arahantship, so that the Buddha, as a exceptional teacher, Buddho is awake, and Buddho Bhagawa is translated here as holy. Kind of okay translation, but can be a bit fraught in the English language. The Bhagawa is generally sort of, it's translated as the Blessed One, both one who brings blessings and himself is blessed with many fortunate qualities. But the Buddha, this quality of being awake, awake to the truth, awake to reality, awake to liberation, was woken up from the delusion of general existence. So that these are qualities of the Buddha, and we can use this. It's just like you memorize the chanting. It's 9 little words or phrases. It's not that much. It's not beyond most people's capability. And then going over that in the mind, bringing up these qualities, it just brightens the mind. This is a, and also this is, say, the qualities of the Buddha are never, I say, they're never reserved for just the Buddha. The Buddha is the person who paved the way for the rest of us to realize the truths that he himself realized, and has opened the door for us. So that sense of the just going over those qualities and reflecting, it's really, it brightens the mind. There's inspiration can come up, and so that seeding the mind with happiness and well-being. And one doesn't have to spend the whole meditation doing that, but once one's generated a certain energy of well-being, then you can turn attention to that settling of staying with the breath as it comes in, the breath as it goes out, not getting caught in discursive proliferation. But the mind is happy to settle on an object when there is this foundation of well-being. So these are an important aspect of preparing the mind properly for doing the work that needs to be done. Dhammanusati is a recollection of the Dhamma, and it's similar, just going over it word by word. That's at Sawaka to Bhagavata Dhammo Santitiko Akaniko Ehi Pasiko Opanahiko Pachatang Veditabo Vinyuhi. It's fairly, we chant it all the time. The Dhamma is well expounded by the Blessed One. I'm just reflecting. Yeah, gosh, it's hearing truth is always refreshing. It's apparent here and now. It's just this can be santitiko. It gets apparent here and now. It can be seen in this present moment. It's not that, I have to do this for this amount of time or this amount, or get this amount of kind of Buddha points, and and then I can finally see it. It's apparent here now. The truth is always here. It's not. Of course, it is hidden by our delusion and our confusion, but That's not the nature of Dhamma. That's the nature of our deluded, confused mind. Those are two different things. The Dhamma is santitiko. It's apparent here and now. Akaliko is timeless. It's a similar quality. Yes, and the Buddha says, whether a Tathagata appears in the world or doesn't appear in the world, this Dhamma is still true. Everything is impermanent. Everything is unsatisfactory. All things are not self. Sabbe sankhara anicca, sabbe sankhara dukkha, sabbe dhamma anatta. Those fundamental universal truths, characteristics. Ehipasiko, it's encouraging investigation. It's not to be just taken on face value. It's not to be just believed in. It's just the Buddha is encouraging us to investigate it, test it out, try it out, pay attention, look at it carefully. Opanayiko, leading inwards. In Thai, the word is Nam Kama Saitua. It's like to bring. It's like Opanayiko. It's leading inwards is another. That is how it's translated here. But when it's saying leading, is drawing the teachings into the heart. It's bringing it in. It's not sort of looking for anything out there. Just bring it into the heart. And as I say in Thai, it's Nam Kama. It's sort of it's like to respectfully. It's like to introduce it to the heart, bring it in. Pachatang veditabo vinyuhi, to be experienced individually by the wise. And so it's the nature of it. Nobody can give it to you. And the Buddha can't give it to you. It's to be experienced for ourselves. But we do need to exercise our wisdom, but it is there. And so they just Dhammanusati as an exercise. Brightens the mind, lays a foundation. Sanghanusati, recollection of those who practice, and those who have experienced the fruits of practice. Practiced well, practiced directly, practiced insightfully, practiced with integrity. You think, there are those beings who have practiced well. They've really put this teaching into practice, and sometimes it's both on a historical level, just sort of thinking, the reason why this teaching is still here is because people have practiced it and experienced the fruits of it and been willing to show by their example that this is possible. And so that's there's a lot of gratitude come up. Or they're just reflecting on beings who one has confidence in. That this is a person who has really experienced the fruits of the practice. They have practiced well, and whether it's a monastic or a lay person, doesn't really matter. Because that's the in the chant, it's not talking about the monastic or lay, male or female, old or young. It's this weird idiom that almost nobody knows about. We chant it all the time. 4 pairs, 8 kinds of noble beings. But it's the pairs of those who have experienced the fruits of the practice. So a stream enterer, once returner, non-returner, arahant. So both the pairs are those who are on the path for that, and those who have experienced the fruit. And so that is as I said, these are the Blessed One's disciples. These are their true disciples. And so, yeah, it is available there for anyone who's willing to practice in a good way. That's Supatipanno. The recollection of sila, virtue, integrity, and of course and it's recollecting that when we live in a way that does have integrity, that does have is there's a fidelity to moral principles, not in a kind of moralistic or prissy way, but a sense of, God, here's a trustworthy person, and you draw close to that person, and there's a feeling of trust, of inspiration, and and it's because their conduct is, on a fundamental level, you've got this feeling, they're not going to harm us. They keep the first precept. They're not going to rip us off in some way. Keep the second precept. They've got an integrity in their relationships. They've got an honesty and a fidelity to truth. And they're not confused by various intoxicants that are available. So it's just it's on a fundamental level, those 5 precepts, and again, whether it's a layperson or a monastic, it's that commitment to a foundation of harmless behavior. It's also internally one of the things that I think, what it does is, we create a sense of safety for others, and that sense of and knowing that one is creating that safety and has the possibility of that is a foundation of compassion. And so that being, having that commitment, it's very inspiring to the mind. There's a lot of happiness can come. Both in contact with one, knowing there are beings who do have that. And then when we see that within ourselves, recollecting the value of that, and recognizing, this is really important to me. It brings up a lot of happiness and well-being. So that sila anusati, chahaka anusati, it's Jaga is usually translated as generosity, and Jaga is literally usually means like something like giving up, like so that giving up, relinquishing, being willing to relinquish the kind of selfishness or miserliness, that worry that we tend to have of, what am I going to get? what am I? That worry that if there's so much available, if I don't get it, I'm going to miss out. And in the sense of Jaga, just being able to, that sense of self-worry or self-obsession drops away. And the expression of, say, of Jaga, of that giving up, is dana, is giving, is sharing. But that recollection of that the power of that giving up, it brings a lot of lightness to the mind. Because there's a lot of, if we view the world through that zero-sum mentality of I've got to, what am I going to miss out on, or what do I have to get? There's limited resources, I better get it. And it's not very beautiful. It's not very bright. And the last quality, Devatanusanti, which is a recollection of the devas. And what's interesting, because in say devas are like celestial beings, and so heavenly beings, celestial beings, beings of Deva literally means bright beings. So that, but beings of brightness, and in the formula for that, there's that it's not so much one's going around and worshipping celestial beings, but what one was reflecting on those bright beings, those celestial beings that are reaping the fruits of their actions, because everything is there's a cause and condition for the arising of conditions to be present, and if that condition is a state of being a heavenly being, there's a cause for that. And the Buddha said, those beings, and again, if one has a hard time accepting the say the cosmology of Buddhism, the reality is that there's even in the human realm, there's these beings who are really bright, really have this ethereal or kind of quality or refined qualities to them, and so that, but whatever these beings, the cause and condition for the Buddha says, their faith, their virtue, their learning, their generosity, their wisdom, that is the cause for them to be these bright. I also have those same qualities. I've been focusing on these virtues myself. I value those virtues myself, and so that one can delight in that. So that these are qualities to be that one can attend to, and should really worth experimenting with it too. Look at the Buddha, the anusati, recollection, using the mind to recollect, to bring to mind qualities of the Buddha, of the Dhamma, of the Sangha, of virtue, of generosity, of the devas, so that and whatever works, whatever is helpful to foster this sense of happiness and well-being, because that's, as the Buddha says in some suttas, as he goes through that progression of, say, of inspiration, of gladness, of joy, of tranquility, of happiness, and of samadhi, of concentration, the happy mind is easily concentrated. And so that putting those conditions, putting the attention in a way that the mind does experience happiness and well-being. And so then it can settle without being, there's like a broad foundation for that settling, rather than concentrating the mind on a point and trying to hold it there desperately, which when I'm describing it in a way that should be obvious. It's not so stable, it's not so solid, it's not so steady, and finding ways where that steadiness of mind, there's some oomph behind it. There's some foundation there, because it's, we really only get to penetrate our, the ways that we get hooked by greed, hatred, delusion, get hooked by our views and opinions, our attachments and our grasping, the ways that we get hooked by just the convention and the world. It can be really refined, so that stability and steadiness and clarity of the mind is really essential to pay attention to, so that we're able to have an opportunity, give ourselves the best chance to untangle this mess. So I'll offer that for reflection this evening.
We can finish with the chant on page 33.